All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. I really like this intro. It's Friday night. We talk a little bit about that national championship game coming up on Monday night. I love that national championship game, but I hate that college football season's about to be over. Before we get into that, let's get into a few other notable things in the world of college sports. Texas basketball fired Chris Beard. The University of Texas fires Chris Beard. I think this is one of those deals. I've been up front since the beginning saying two things. I don't think there's any way, or at least there's very few ways, that Chris Beard gets to keep his job at the University of Texas. I said the only way he gets to do that, in my opinion, and I'm not a regent. I'm not the president of University of Texas, not the athletic director at the University of Texas. But my thoughts were that if someone had irrefutable evidence that what the victim alleged did not happen, in other words, enough to exonerate him, get them to drop charges, that might be enough for him to keep his job. Because, listen, this is one of those things where you don't want to be wrong. You obviously don't want to turn your back on the fact that maybe someone abused someone and that someone was a female. There's a few things in this country still left that you don't get to get away with doing. You don't get to do. One of those things is beating women, choking women, attacking women. You just don't get to do that. So you don't want to turn your back on that. You don't want to say, there's no way that happened. Chris Beard's never done it before. Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. You definitely do not want to do that. But you also don't want to, you don't want to ruin a guy's career over an allegation where there's not a lot of evidence to support it, maybe. Or maybe there's not even a charge because there's not enough evidence to support it. It's a real bad deal, man. The problem with these types of incidents is we will almost never know what really happened. Her story could have been 100% correct. He could have attacked her. He could have bitten her. He could have choked her. Her story could also be a lot of bullshit. She might have got pissed at him. I bet you alcohol was involved in this whole thing. And we all know that people don't make their best decisions when they're consuming alcohol or substances similar to alcohol. So her allegations could be 100% false, and the problem with these things are the second it comes out that Chris Beard is arrested for domestic abuse, and in the manner, the strangulation, the of a household member, and then it quickly came out that it was his fiance, or it was very quickly evident that it was his fiance. The initial reaction by everybody is to say, "Well, god dang, we can't have our coach beaten. We can't have any coach. We can't have any man hitting a woman like that or choking a woman. You just don't do it." And I think that's an okay gut reaction, but I think it's on everybody to step back and say, well, wait a second. Did he even do it? Because at that point, you can't just say, you got to fire him. And that's just a public opinion thing, but put yourself in the position of a university. There's a lot of, the University of Texas and all universities are responsible for a lot of things. Their reputation being one of those things. Even if Chris Beard didn't do a single thing that she said, there's always going to be this buzz out there. There's always going to be this contingent of folks that say, if they would have kept Chris Beard on, they care more about winning basketball games than they do about domestic violence victims. We all know how our culture's gotten. there's almost no in between anymore. You're either this or you're that. And if you're not this, you're definitely that. And so the University of Texas was in a really shitty spot from the very beginning of this thing. And I just thought because of that, that's just one of those things you got to stay away from. You just can't. It doesn't even matter that he might not have done it. It doesn't even matter that there might not be evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it. It doesn't matter. You can't have that kind of cloud over your program. And so because of that, I thought there's no way he's gonna retain his job. But then as it got further and further along, and listen, the University of Texas could have fired him that morning. There's a clause in his contract that says being charged with a felony is grounds for termination of this contract. So they could have put him out on the street that morning. And so because they didn't, and not just in a few days they didn't, we're talking weeks they didn't, it led me to believe, or I just started thinking, well, there's got to be something. Like, there's got to be a reason they haven't fired him yet. If they're going to fire him, like, what are they waiting on? Does he have something, or do they have something, or has there been, information that they've heard or found out that doesn't jive with the allegations? And, they're trying to figure out and navigate through all that stuff. I don't know. I've never been in that type of position where you had to think about all those different things and sort of, strategically work your way through a scenario like that. So I don't know why the delay in firing him. I don't know at what point they finally came to the realization that we just don't have a choice. This is what we've got to do. And listen, they offered to let him resign. He's obviously said no. So the obviously, that's a big hit for Chris Beard. It's a big hit for his fiance from a financial perspective, from a professional perspective for him. But man, I think the real victims are really those players, those kids on that team that. And again, I don't know if Chris Beard is guilty of any of this stuff. At this point, it doesn't really matter. The damage is done to the basketball program. The damage is done to the reputation of the University of Texas as a whole. The damage is done to that team, that locker room of guys. The damage is done to that fan base that Chris Beard really came in and embraced and sort of did his best to build this relationship with the fan base. So the fans wanted to come out and watch games. So the students wanted to come out and be a part of the games, wanted to create this home court advantage for the University of Texas. All that damage is done. So now these kids, these recruits, they just signed a class just a few weeks ago. And since all this has happened, those kids say they're all in. And it's probably different for every recruit, what makes them all in about going to a certain school. For some, it's just the school itself. I've always loved the University of Texas. That's where I want to be. For some, it's the coaching staff. For some, it could be something completely silly like, this girl talked to me on 6th Street while I was there visiting. Or, now in the world of NIL, school A is gonna take care of me better than school B can. There's just a multitude of reasons why a kid would choose to go to one school over the other. And I feel like, from a Chris Beard perspective, that's probably a big reason. He's got he had a good coaching reputation. He did crazy things at the University of Texas Tech University. They have some tradition of basketball there at Texas Tech. But man, he got there and he built that thing up and they freaking went to the damn final. Kids see that. Kids want to be a part of that. So I don't, if you look at the recruiting perspective, I don't know what the impact's going to be for that. I don't know if a lot of these kids that were considering and basketball is one of those interesting sports from a recruiting perspective, you generally see it's starting to, college football is not completely void of kids completely leaving their region and going someplace else to play. But I feel like in basketball, you see it all the time. You see these kids from the Northeast. You see kids from Canada. You see, you just see these kids end up at just odd places. Places you wouldn't figure they'd end up at. So I don't know if, with Chris Beard being gone, it's enough to draw in those types of kids. I don't know the remaining staff, what their relationship is with those recruits. I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see if Texas can keep this current class that they just signed together. And I don't know what the rules are. I don't know if they can go in the portal right now. I don't know if they can back out of their letter of intent. To me, a letter of intent almost seems like a non-deal. I don't even know why it's a thing, because they can break it so easily. But there may be some details around letter of intent that I don't understand. Tough deal for those players. They've got to figure out a way. They got two choices. They can lay down and quit because their leader's gone, and probably the reason most of them are there is gone. Or they can figure out a way to come together, support the new coach, help the new coach, and go out and win basketball games. They're certainly talented enough. They're certainly experienced enough. Chris Beard, if you look at the last few games, the defense has been not good. It's gotten worse and worse almost every game. Chris Beard not being there is affecting the product on the court. To what extent is that Chris Beard? I don't know. Is it really, if you're in a vacuum, you have Chris Beard, you go to a different vacuum without Chris Beard, what is that difference? I don't know the answer to that. There's a whole lot of other variables there. There's just this whole deal and having to deal with it and the uncertainty and not knowing what's going to happen with Chris Beard. Maybe that's what they need is some closure. Maybe they've been distracted by the fact that there hasn't been closure, but the defense has been really bad. They scored 103 points against Kansas State and lost by double digits. That's almost unheard of in a college game. I think Kansas State's a good basketball team. Obviously, they're 13-1. I don't know if they're good enough to be winning by double. And they were hot. Don't get me wrong. If you watch that game, Kansas State was on fire. They could not miss. And every time Texas got it back close, they were able to hit a big shot and widen that gap again. The backcourt was really good in that game for Texas. That backcourt, I've said it multiple times this year, they're elite. And if Arterio Morris, if that guy ever comes on and can be consistent, he's had games this year where he's been amazing, and he's had other games where he just couldn't do anything. If he can figure it out and get focused and get dialed in and just be consistent, he doesn't have to be great. He just needs to be consistent, consistently good. That backcourt is probably the best backcourt in college basketball. But the backcourt led in scoring again. No surprise there. 29 points, 27 points, 16 points. But the defense was just completely non-existent. And it looked to me like the effort wasn't there. And again, there could be a lot of reasons why the effort wasn't there. K-State got way too many easy looks at the basket from deep and from right underneath the basket. It could just be that maybe that Texas basketball team isn't as good as, their early season record made them look. That could 100% be the case. We'll have to see. But I know this, they got to get back to playing that sort of bully defense they played earlier this season. There was a huge difference in the way the effort they played with on defense under Chris Beard versus that game against Kansas State. So they got to figure that out. And then the University of Texas got to figure out who's our coach. And, Chris Del Conte made some comments when they announced that they were, parting ways with Chris Beard, they made it seem like Rodney Terry's going to be there at least through the end of this season. But I wonder, from a recruiting perspective, they obviously want to do their due diligence and they want to make sure they get the right guy. And we are in the middle of the season, and most of the top candidates for a position like this are coaching basketball right now. So it's kind of a rough deal for Texas in terms of that. They certainly don't want to wait too long after the season's over to make a decision, just from a recruiting perspective. But who are those? Who is Texas targeting? And I'm going to preface this by saying I have no inside information. I got this list off of Horns 247. Jeff Howe put a list together. I don't know if that's just a wish list of his, or if he's got inside information that these are some of the guys that the University of Texas is targeting. But here's the list. Royal Ivey, Texas X, longtime NBA assistant, is in that list. Eric Musselman, University of Arkansas head coach. Nate Oates, University of Alabama head coach. Alabama's been really good. I don't know how long that Oates feller has been there, but they've been really good the last couple seasons. Rodney Terry, obviously, sitting head coach. And then another interesting one, Jay Wright was a coach at Villanova and Hofstra. A lot of runs in the NCAA tournament, but he's an analyst now. If he was interested and that was a route they wanted to go, they could get him in now, obviously. So that's the 5 names I've heard. I don't know how legitimate it is. I don't know if that's what's on the marker board there at the University of Texas War Room for hiring a new coach. The other thing, when you start talking about Arkansas and Alabama's coaches, I don't know where Texas sits on the hierarchy of college basketball in terms of what's a great job. I know the University of Texas head football coach, that's a job a lot of people want. That's probably a top 5 job in the country. I don't know where Texas sits on that, and I don't know I certainly don't know where Arkansas or Alabama sit on that hierarchy, that totem pole. It may very well be that Arkansas and Alabama are considered better places to be. I know one thing Texas has got. Texas has got a couple things going for them. They just built a new arena. They got a really good, talented group of players. They just signed a really good, talented class. So if they can keep that together, there's players there. There's whoever steps into this job is not going to have to worry about rebuilding a roster if they can hold on to some guys, which is a big if. So there are some advantages for Texas. Again, though, I just don't know. I don't know if a guy would leave the University of Arkansas for the Texas job. I don't know if a guy would leave the University of Alabama for a Texas job in basketball. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, where they go, how fast they go. For me, I'm sitting here and going, and I'm not like a giant basketball fan. I like to watch Texas play basketball. Told you guys that before. I certainly like the Final Four stuff, the March Madness stuff. That's exciting to watch those games. But I'm not like this big basketball guy. But I'll be interested to see if they can get it together, kind of focus on themselves, and go out and be the best they can be, regardless of whether they have Chris Beard or not. This team, like I said, they could really go. Well, I guess they could really only go one of two ways. I mean, they can just fold up the tent and go home because it's raining, or they can figure out a way to get through the rain and see what's on the other side. Said it again. They're talented. They're experienced. There's no reason why they can't get through this and make a run. I think it's going to have an effect on them, though, this season. I mean, I think obviously their coach is gone, and he's been gone for a couple weeks, but they didn't know the fate. They didn't know it's a done deal, and it is now an absolute done deal. So another coach we don't know a done deal on, Jim Harbaugh. What is going on? So there was all these rumors come out earlier this week. There was one source saying that if Jim Harbaugh can get an NFL opportunity, he's 100% gone. Like he wants to go to the NFL. And when I saw that, I was like, that is weird. he's at his dream job from a collegiate perspective. He's a Michigan alum. It took him a while, but he's finally got them where that fan base wanted him to get them and where he probably knew he could get them, and obviously where any coach wants to be. They've been in the semifinals the last 2 years. They haven't fared well in those semifinal games, obviously going 0-2. They haven't got to the pinnacle yet. But you can't make the national championship game if you can't get into the semifinal, and he's done that the last 2 seasons. He's got Michigan football in a really good spot. He's recruiting pretty well. He's not killing it, but he's, outside of this recruiting class, he's got all top 10 classes. I believe their 2023 class came in at 17. So he's doing a lot of good things, and he's got Michigan in a good spot. So why in the hell would he want to go to the NFL? Like, why would you want to leave now? And then all these rumors about NCAA violations came out, and apparently the NCAA has said that the University of Michigan and Jim Harbaugh have 4 violations. Most of them are level 2 violations. And it seems to be sort of surrounding analyst type roles, participating in practices, coaching on the field. But the big one is the level 1, false or misleading information to investigators. And if the question is, did you allow this analyst to go on the field? I don't know how you mislead. You either lie or you tell the truth. So I saw an article today that said now that all this is going, he's probably going to stay at Michigan. Who knows? Who knows if the rumor was started to try to get more money, or if it was a direct result of all of this. But to me, it's kind of odd that Jim Harbaugh is caught up in any kind of scandalous type stuff. I certainly don't feel like any of these guys are infallible. And the other thing is, I don't think you have to be a genius to be a college football coach, and I don't think you have to be a genius to be a successful at a high level college football coach. A lot of these guys probably break the rules and they don't even realize it. So, again, who's the losers here? Let's say the NCAA smashes down on Michigan, and let's say Jim Harbaugh golden parachutes to the NFL. It's not going to hurt him. Excuse me. But it's going to hurt that program. It's going to set that program back. And listen, these Michigan fans, they went years without being relevant. And I can say all these things because I'm a damn Texas fan. I know exactly what it's like to go years without being relevant. So they've gone years without being relevant. And then it probably took them longer than they would have wanted it to take for Harbaugh to get them back where they thought they should be. They're there now. And all that might go sailing right out the door. Whether they get hit by NCAA violations that hold the program back, or whether Harbaugh just ups and leaves because he doesn't want to deal with any of it. That's one of the shitty parts about this whole coaching thing, and why so many people are so adamant about NIL and transfer portal and all those things, is because coaches rarely in the long term get affected by any of these scandals. Sure, they may have to pull themselves out of coaching for a while, and may have to take these lesser type jobs. Maybe they take these lesser jobs coaching, or maybe they end up at bigger places, but they're in these analyst roles. But ultimately, it doesn't hurt them. They still get their money. And after a few years, all that shit they did will wear off, and nobody will care about it anymore. And they get to go right back to work. Or in the case of Harbaugh, he may jump right to the NFL. So the program suffers. The university's reputation suffers. The kids that are there, again, this all go. I mean, anytime you talk about any of these things, you got to talk about the kids. They're the ones that get affected the most. There's guys that are at Michigan right now because Jim Harbaugh was the coach, or because what Jim Harbaugh was building there at Michigan was something that was interesting to them. If that gets in any way muddied by NCAA violations, or if Jim Harbaugh jumps and leaves, those guys don't have that anymore. They can get in the portal and go somewhere else. But, I mean, we rarely talk about how derailing for these kids these types of things can be. A lot of these kids have a lot of sort of professional chips on the table as well. And these types of things can quickly come in and just trash that whole table. So I honestly never thought Harbaugh would have got caught up in any kind of scandal. I don't know why I thought that. I just never, as far as I know, there's never been any smoke about anything like that with him before. But here we are. See what happens. Speaking of scandals, Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher go out and hire Bobby Petrino as the offensive coordinator. This is a guy, let's just forget, we don't even talk about what he did at Arkansas. Let's not even talk about that because it's not even worth talking about. But this is a guy, again, he got caught up in a scandal. He has to get out of the limelight for a while. And now he's finally starting to, be able to come back. And he is. There's been rumor here, rumor there. He just accepted a few weeks ago or a few days ago maybe the UNLV offensive coordinator position. And Jimbo, snake oil salesman Jimbo, swoops in and gets one of the biggest pieces of shit in the coaching world to turn his back on UNLV to come join him, one of the other biggest pieces of shit in the coaching world. So I don't think now you're going to ever see two bigger snake oil salesmen on the same coaching staff. And I don't think we've seen it before in college football, and I don't think we'll ever see it again. What is A&M thinking? Honestly, the buyout has got to be the problem. After this season, after last year's historic recruiting class and all the momentum that this Aggie program had coming into this season, all the talk about how this was going to be the season. They were going to win the SEC West. They were going to finally be in that SEC championship game, and they were going to push for the college football playoff. That was this team. And they absolutely laid a fucking egg. And that recruiting class, I don't know the whole numbers. A lot of that recruiting class is in the transfer portal right now. So with all of that shit going on, how the hell do you go out and hire Bobby Petrino? How do you let Jimbo Fisher trick you into believing that that's the best way to take this program? That's the direction we need to go. We need to hire this asshole. He's gonna get us where we need to go. Not the guy not me. Not the guy you're paying. And you're paying so much money to me, and my buyout is so big that you can't even fire me. I think this is probably the smartest move Jimbo Fisher's ever made in the history of coaching, because now he's got a wall between him and all the criticism. When the offense sucks next year, he's got an excuse. Oh, well, we're installing new stuff. We're installing Bobby's offense. It's going to take time. And then maybe next year, maybe we need to run Bobby out of here. It's not working out. Or God forbid, he does something stupid and you get mixed up in another scandal. I don't know, man. I think I can't imagine any reasonable Aggies, and I know there's probably not a lot of reasonable Aggies, but I can't imagine any reasonable Aggies feeling like this was a good hire. Not only from a football perspective, but from an optics perspective. But here we are. Aggie is going to Aggie. All right. College football national championship game. Number 3, TCU. Number 1, Georgia. First of all, congratulations to both of those teams. They both won. I wouldn't swear to it, but I don't think there's ever been 2 semifinal games that were that good since we started this whole playoff thing in Division I. There may not have ever been any semifinal games in an individual season that have been that good. So congrats to both of those teams for coming out on the other side of all of that and being in this game. If you've listened to the podcast at all, seen any of my TikTok videos at all, I've been pretty, I wouldn't say critical of TCU, just skeptical of TCU. They're there, man. They've made it. They've made it as far as you can go. Let's talk about whether we think they can finish the deal, seal the deal. So looking at this game just by the numbers, I think even if you don't dig into the numbers, I think everybody would pretty much say on paper, Georgia's the team. On paper, Georgia's been the team all season, at least from midway point on. I know Alabama was ranked number 1 for a while. But if you look at what Georgia's done, you had Alabama, then you had Tennessee because Tennessee beat Alabama. And then Georgia just absolutely monkey stomped Tennessee. And that's when they really vaulted into the number 1 position. But they've been playing good. I mean, they played Oregon to open the season and just absolutely ran Oregon out of the building. And Oregon's not a great team. But they're not a bad team. And I mean, they ran them out of the building. So Georgia's the team. But if you do dig into the numbers, there's 2 categories out of all the big main categories of statistics where TCU has an advantage. And I've got 6 here in front of me. 2 of them, TCU has the edge. That's rushing offense and scoring offense, and it's not by much. And then in the areas where they aren't as good as Georgia, they are not nearly as good as Georgia. So paper-wise, you'd have to say, I don't think TCU has the horses to stay in a game. But Hypnotoad has been a thing all season, and I don't know where that came from. I think I know the context, and maybe I don't even know the context. So if I completely misrepresent what Hypnotoad is, someone let me know. My understanding of Hypnotoad is just kind of in response, just a personification of this team and what they've been able to do to come back and win games all season. Kind of, I don't know, cardiac kid type thing. Hypnotoad. So for me, does TCU have any more Hypnotoad gas left in the tank? Even in the one game they lost this year, there was a hell of a lot of Hypnotoad going. And if Garrett Riley doesn't take the ball out of his best player's hands, inexplicably, Garrett Riley probably will miss sleep. If they don't win this national championship, I don't know. If they don't win this national championship game, I think Garrett Riley is going to lose sleep. He'll lose sleep for that. Anybody would. But I think he's going to look back and lose sleep about this Big 12 championship game, the end of this Big 12 championship game, where he just said, I know Max Duggan is the only reason I'm here. But I don't think I'm going to give him, I don't think I'm going to let him have the ball. Garrett Riley did everything he could. Garrett Riley is stronger than Hypnotoad. That's how strong Garrett Riley is. He might be the only guy on the planet that can fuck up Hypnotoad. I don't know. We'll see. But I just wonder, can they keep doing that? I've talked a lot this year about how Ohio State back in 2002 was a similar type team that you looked at, they just kept winning games. They weren't all that impressive, but they just kept finding ways to win games. And they trailed in some games that year against bad teams. And TCU has trailed this year against some bad teams. And outside of that one bad mark on the board in the Big 12 championship game, they figured out a way to win them all. We're going to find out how much they have in the tank, but that's got to be a question. I mean, I can't imagine any TCU fan. I mean, are TCU fans at this point, are they like so engulfed in just what's the word I'm looking for? Like the trance of being in the national championship game that they don't even care anymore. Like are they confident? I remember I went to Austin for the Texas and TCU game, and there were quite a bit of TCU fans around pregame and sitting near us. They didn't look confident. They at that point in their season, it was kind of one of those points in the season where they're like, yeah, we're undefeated and we've come back and we've won some games and we're in the catbird seat, but are we really legit? That's all. I mean, I wouldn't say that was the case for all of them, but it had a different feel. The TCU fans had a different aura about them at that game than I've seen other fan bases have coming in to Darrell K. Royal. They were still kind of in wait and see mode. Are they still in wait and see mode, or are they just like captivated by this and they can do no wrong? Or are there still some of them out there that are going, damn, if I objectively look at that semifinal game, we got 2 pick sixes and the refs overturned a pretty obvious touchdown. And then on the next play, we got a fumble recovery in the end zone. That's 3 huge defensive plays. I mean, huge. So are they sitting there thinking that way, or are they just like high? Are they on a football high and they don't even care? I think I would be sitting there going, man, do we have enough in the tank to do this again? But we'll see. Another question about this game is Max Duggan, does he have enough in the tank? Man, that dude has been a warrior this year. Max Duggan, he is not a flashy guy. He's a leader. To me, he's like what anybody would want their son to grow up to be in terms of like just never quits. He's a leader. His team is going to respect him, and he's just going to give you everything he's got, like effort-wise. That dude's he doesn't have any more in the tank when the game is over. Can he keep doing that? Can he do that one more time against Georgia? I have no doubt he'll try, but will his try be enough? I think whether the score is close in this game or whether they're down by 50, you're gonna get the absolute best you can get out of Max Duggan. But is it enough? Is it enough to be close with a chance to win? Or is his best, is what he's got left just not enough? I don't know. We're going to find out that too. And then, you flip it over to the Georgia side. I think there's a ton of pressure on Georgia. Georgia's been the team. Georgia on paper is the team. It took Kirby Smart a while to get over that Alabama hump, but he did. They won a national championship. Now they got a really good opportunity to make it 2 in a row. How much pressure is there on those guys? I think there's got to be a lot. I think the favorite always has more pressure, just in general. And then you look at this Georgia team. TCU wasn't even ranked at the beginning of the year. Georgia should go out and beat them into submission. Their roster is better. But it's not always about who's got the better roster, obviously. So, I think probably the biggest question is both these teams played in really wild semifinal games, emotionally draining semifinal games, mentally draining semifinal games, obviously physically draining semifinal games. Which team fills up all those tanks better over the course of this week? Which team can get past all the hoopla and all the external distractions that come with being in the national championship game? It's on TV everywhere. TCU this and Georgia that, and we've got this presser thing, and we've got this event thing we got to go to, and which team can get through all of that with their tanks full and can go do what they did last Saturday again this Monday? We're going to find out. I think the keys to this game for me, one of them's obvious, trenches. And it's really a cop-out, but it's the truth. You look at the majority of games where one team dominates in the trenches, or maybe they don't even dominate, but they consistently win battles in the trenches. 95% of the time, that team's winning. And if they don't win, it's because of turnovers. It's because they, maybe they dominated between the 20s and they just couldn't get it in the end zone, stuff like that. But typically, the team that wins on the offensive line and the defensive line the most is going to win the football game. So I might as well not even talk about that one anymore. You guys should always just assume that I'm going to say trenches because it's the truth. I think both of these offensive and defensive line units are good. If they weren't good, they wouldn't be there, because that's what you got to have. Offensive line and offensive line more than defensive line, but both of those units are the most overlooked units in all of college football. People are always ragging on Texas. You guys had all these high recruiting classes, and y'all couldn't ever do anything. You couldn't put people in the league, and those things are all true. But you know what those classes didn't have at all since Mac Brown left? They didn't have offensive line and defensive line. They had no star power, no blue chip type guys. Very few, not no, because that's not accurate, but very few blue chip guys. And the guys they did bring in that were blue chip, they didn't do it. They didn't develop, and they didn't live up to that 4 and 5 star rating. You have to have a good offensive line, or it doesn't matter who your quarterback is. It doesn't matter who your running back is. It doesn't matter how good your wide receivers are. It all starts up front, and people forget that. I'm not ever going to forget that, because I was one of them fat dudes, man. I played in the trenches. I know that's where it begins and ends. I think another key to this game is who can make big plays on defense. And I don't necessarily mean like turnovers. Turnovers are good. You had TCU last week with those 2 pick sixes. Those obviously huge plays in that game. But like sacks and who can get off the field in those really critical moments of the game. And which defense, both of these offenses have big play potential. They got guys that can make big plays, both in the running game and the passing game. So which defense can keep that to a minimum? Big plays are a backbreaker. That's why so many college coaches hunt that big play. That's why Steve Sarkisian goes deep 7, 8, 9, 10 times a game. Because those big plays are killer plays, and it's hard to go on a 12-play drive. Why go 12 plays, 70 yards, 75 yards, when you can go 3 plays, 75 yards, get a touchdown? Big plays. Who can stop them? Who can create some big plays? And then I think the biggest thing, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, we alluded to it, is just who can handle the moment. There's all this shit going on because it's the national championship game. Just step back and let's forget the fact that it's the national championship game. We're playing for the freaking national championship. This is what we're here for. This is what every kid that goes to college to play football, even the ones that go to places that are never going to win a national championship, they're thinking about that. They think about, man, how freaking cool would it be to win a national championship? So take all that out of the conversation. You got all this crap going on all week. All these distractions. You can't even turn the TV on to a sports channel without seeing your teammates, seeing your coach, seeing people talk about your team. This team can do that. This team can do this. The other day was the 17th anniversary. I believe it was the 17th. Yeah, 17th anniversary of Texas's last national championship. And so Longhorn Network was playing all kinds of stuff. And one of the little series they showed was, kind of took us through the season and then into sort of before the national championship game, once Texas punched their ticket, once USC punched their ticket, and just all the media talk. They flew the game day guys out to Los Angeles to talk about, to rate USC against the greatest college football teams of all time. Who would win? I mean, they didn't even talk about Texas that week. Hardly at all. I don't know. I don't watch much sports TV in the middle of the week, so I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on as far as that goes, but I bet you when these guys turn the TV on and they watch it for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, they're seeing something about this national championship game. So there's all these external distractions. A lot of these guys are going pro. A lot of these guys are trying to figure out if they want to go pro. It's a very draining time for a lot of these young men. And I call them kids all the time. A lot of people don't like it. So I'll either call them young men or kids, but it doesn't matter. They're still kids. I'm old. So who can handle that better? And I think when you start to look at that, you got to look at who's been there or who's been anywhere close to there. And this Georgia team has been there. A lot of their players have been there. They've played in SEC championship games. They've played in big, non-conference games. They've played in games to get into SEC championship games. They've obviously played in the national championship last year. TCU doesn't have that. And that doesn't mean TCU can't win the game. If they do win the game, it's going to be a hill they're going to have to overcome. It's a hurdle they're going to have to get over. Same thing for the coaching staffs. Experience matters, and TCU does not have a lot of experience. Gillespie, the offensive coordinator, he's been a coordinator for 4 years, or excuse me, the defensive coordinator. He's been a coordinator for 4 years. 3 of those were at Tulsa. How many big games do you think he oversaw defensively at the University of Tulsa or Tulsa University or however you say it? 0. Garrett Riley's been an offensive coordinator for 3 years. 2 of them at SMU. How many big games do you think that guy called at SMU? And then, Sonny Dykes been a head coach for a while, but he hasn't really had a team in a position like this. So their coaching staff is inexperienced in this type of situation. The team is inexperienced in this type of situation. And again, that doesn't mean they're not going to win. It doesn't mean they can't win. It just means it's a little bit, they have a little bit more adversity to overcome to do it. Kirby Smart's been in all kinds of big games. Been the head coach. He's been an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator in a lot of big games. His offensive coordinator, this Monken guy, he's been an offensive coordinator, a head coach for a decade. Will Muschamp has been around the block 15 times for decades, coaching in big football games as a head coach and as a coordinator. So those things don't mean the deal is over. It just means that's another advantage that Georgia has over TCU. Prediction time. I haven't been down on TCU. I've picked against TCU a lot this year. Not a lot. I picked against them in the semi. I picked against them in the Big 12 championship game. I can't remember. I think I picked Texas to win a real close one against them in Austin. We'll just say I did. So I'm 1-2 picking against TCU. And I don't do that because it's TCU. I think TCU is a really interesting story. They've got playmakers, but they don't have like a very talented roster. Like, you just don't look at TCU's roster and get amazed by what they have. But what they do is play really hard. And they got a really good leader on the field. I just feel like in this game, again, Georgia's experience from a player perspective, from a coaching perspective, is going to be too much for TCU to overcome. I think Georgia clearly has the better offensive line and defensive line. I thought Michigan had a huge advantage offensively in the trenches, and it just didn't really play out on the field. So I will say this. To me, I feel like this game is going to be a lot more like these semifinal games were than if you would have asked me a few weeks ago and said, if you'd have told me TCU is playing Georgia in the national championship game, predict the score, I would have predicted Georgia running away with the thing. But after watching them both in the semifinals, I think it's going to be much more like one of those semifinal games. I still think Georgia's going to win this game pretty comfortably, but I don't think it's going to be a run them out of the stadium type thing. I think Georgia's going to win this game 41-27. So that's my prediction. I might. I've been messing around trying to learn about live streaming and all that. I might do a live stream of the game Monday night. We'll just have to see. That'd be pretty cool, I think. But that's it, man. That's my prediction. I think Georgia's just going to be too much. Check out the podcast. You can check it out anywhere you listen to podcasts. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. You can find Horn Takes Podcast on Buzzsprout. All this stuff goes up on YouTube. Check out the YouTube page, Horn Takes Podcast. I do a lot of short videos there. I do short videos on TikTok, Horn Takes Podcast on TikTok. You can email me all your questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, horntakespodcast@gmail.com. I love them all. You guys have a good weekend. Hook 'em.